Aaron's laughter echoed through the luxurious Gallagher estate. It was razor-sharp. It shredded the last shred of my family's dignity. My wife Diane was sitting on the ground. The silver dress she had sewn by hand for our son's wedding was now smeared with mud. The rain had just stopped. The white gravel path leading to the ceremony had suddenly turned into a swamp of humiliation. Brittany, my new daughter-in-law, looked down at her with disgust. She lightly brushed off the train of her ivory lace wedding gown. She spoke in a commanding tone. "Oh my God, look who's dirtying up my aisle. Where's security? Why are middle-level workers wandering around the VIP guest area?" Aaron didn't even help his mother up. He walked over. He wrapped an arm around Brittany's waist. He looked me straight in the eye. There wasn't a trace of remorse in his eyes. There was only mockery. Aaron spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Mom, I told you not to wear this cheap outfit. You ruined our $1,000 wedding photos." 300 upper-class guests fell silent. Then they began whispering. Pitying eyes turned toward us. They thought we were pathetic. They thought we were a burden to their successful son. I stood there. I didn't shout. Anger is a cheap emotion. I walked over to Diane. I helped her to her feet. I used my handkerchief to wipe the mud from my wife's trembling face. Diane looked at me. Her eyes were blurred with tears. She shook her head. She told me to hold back. But my limit had been crossed. Aaron looked at me with defiance. He pulled a check out of his suit pocket. He threw it toward me. The check floated through the air before landing in the muddy puddle at my feet. Aaron smirked. "Dad, here's $150,000. A thank you gift for raising me. Take it and go. Don't embarrass me in front of the Gallagher family anymore." Today I realized one truth. The son I had raised all these years had sold his soul to vanity. I bent down. I picked up the mud-covered check. I walked straight onto the main stage. I headed toward the microphone. The entire hall held its breath. They thought I was about to cry and beg. They thought I would ask for charity. I held the check high for the cameras. I looked straight at Aaron and my in-law Vincent Gallagher. I tore the check in half with both hands. The sharp sound of ripping paper echoed through the powerful speaker system. I let the torn pieces fall to the ground. "Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. I'm Warren. Let me tell you about a humiliation I'll never forget." Leave a number 1 in the comments so we can continue the story and hit subscribe. You're going to love this story. I stepped down from the stage. I tightly held Diane's hand. We turned our backs and walked straight toward the gate like two ghosts leaving a party of the upper class. Aaron shouted from behind us, "Dad, you're going to regret this. You're nothing without my money." I didn't turn around. I just smiled. He thought he was at the top. He had no idea that his entire world was about to collapse. "Welcome to your father's game, Aaron." I held the check up and tore it in half in front of 300 guests. The sound of the check being torn still echoed through the air. Pieces of the $150,000 check lay scattered across the muddy ground. The silence that blanketed Gallagher Estate lasted only a few brief seconds. It was immediately followed by a wave of hushed whispers. Aaron took a step forward. His face was twisted with rage. He had never expected a father who had always been patient like me to humiliate him in front of his wealthy in-laws. Brittany crossed her arms over her chest. Her eyes were filled with contempt as she stared at Diane and me walking away. Vincent Gallagher, Brittany's father, stepped onto the stage. He was a heavy-set, middle-aged man wearing an expensive hand-embroidered suit. He snatched the microphone from the master of ceremonies. His deep voice boomed with authority. He spoke loudly. "Warren, what do you think you're doing? This is your son's wedding and my daughter's wedding. If you don't know how to behave like a civilized person, leave immediately. Our company Gallagher Imports does not welcome rude people." Aaron stood beside his future father-in-law. He nodded in agreement. He looked at me with the gaze of someone superior looking down on someone beneath him. He spoke into the microphone, so every guest could hear. "Dad, did you hear what Vincent said? I tried to give you a dignified way out, but you chose to humiliate yourself. Starting tomorrow, I will officially take over the position of strategic partner at Gallagher Imports. I will have power, wealth, and status that you could never reach in your entire life. You're nothing more than a middle manager whose time is running out." Aaron's arrogant declaration drew thunderous applause from the crowd below. They looked at Aaron like a rising star. They looked at me like a pitiful failure. I stopped at the edge of the stage. I turned back and looked at my only son. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I looked at the sparkling wedding ring on his finger, the ring he had bought with his mother's savings. The contempt inside me reached its peak. Aaron believed that attaching himself to the Gallagher family would change his life. He thought a business card with the word partner on it would turn him into nobility. He had completely forgotten who had paid his business school tuition. He had forgotten who had co-signed his first loan. His stupidity was truly pathetic. I looked Vincent Gallagher straight in the eye. I looked at his triumphant smile. I knew the true financial condition of Gallagher Imports. I knew the dark corners he was trying to hide behind all this glamour. I smiled mysteriously. A smile that made Aaron shudder without realizing why. I spoke quietly, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Do you think you've reached the top, Aaron, and Joy, tonight? Because this is the last night you'll ever be a wealthy man. I helped Diane into the car. Our old sedan started, then rolled away from the magnificent estate. Behind us, the wedding music began playing joyfully again. They continued celebrating. They continued laughing at our humiliation. They had no idea that this old car was carrying the man who held the fate of every one of them in his hands. My old sedan sped through the darkness. The cabin was completely silent. Only the windshield wipers squeaked across the glass. Diane sat in the passenger seat. She stared out the window. Her shoulders still trembled from time to time. I reached over and took my wife's ice-cold hand. I didn't offer empty words of comfort. Actions are always worth more than words. Real wealth is silence. Only the weak need to shout to prove who they are, just like Aaron and the Gallagher family had done. They thought I was a middle manager whose time was almost over. They thought I survived on a modest paycheck just to make ends meet. That was the greatest mistake of their lives. I had spent 30 years building an empire in the shadows. I never cared for showing off. I preferred absolute and invisible power. I turned into the parking lot of an isolated building on the outskirts of town. I helped Diane upstairs to rest. After tucking a blanket around her, I walked into my private office. I powered on my secure computer. The blue glow of the monitor illuminated my cold expression. It was time to remove the mask of a gentle old father. I wasn't an ordinary office employee. I was the man behind Apex Holdings. It was the private equity firm that owned the largest logistics supply chain in the region. More importantly, Apex Holdings was the parent company controlling the lifeline of Gallagher Imports. Vincent Gallagher's company was nothing more than a small link in my chain. More than 70% of their inventory supply and every one of their warehousing agreements depended on my approval. I opened the file labeled Gallagher Imports. A sea of red financial figures filled the screen. Vincent was drowning in debt. He had created the illusion of luxury at Gallagher Estate to deceive investors. He needed Aaron to marry Brittany not because of love. He needed Aaron because he believed my son could help him gain access to major investment funds. They were parasites clinging to each other just to survive. I picked up the desk phone. I dialed my personal secretary. The call was answered immediately after the first ring. A respectful voice came through the line. "Chairman Becker, what are your instructions, sir?" I leaned back in my leather chair. My voice was as cold as ice. "Activate a special audit of Gallagher Imports. Freeze every shipment scheduled to arrive at their ports. I want them to feel the chill of collapse before this week is over." "Yes, Mr. Chairman. Everything will be carried out immediately." I hung up. I looked through the floor-to-ceiling window toward the city skyline. Aaron wanted power and status. I was about to show him what real power looked like. But this was only a gentle opening move. What I didn't know yet was that my son's betrayal was even more disgusting than anything I could have imagined. The night grew darker. The clock on the wall of my office struck 2 in the morning. At that exact moment, my secure phone began vibrating across the wooden desk. The screen displayed the name Attorney Pierce. He was the head of Apex Holdings' legal department, and had also been my closest friend for 2 decades. I answered the call. Pierce's voice no longer carried its usual calmness. It trembled with anger. He spoke briefly. "Warren, I have the results of the special audit and Aaron's personal records. You need to hear this right now. It's far worse than we thought." I tightened my grip on the phone. My voice remained cold. "Go ahead, Pierce. I'm ready." Pierce took a deep breath. Then he began reading from the legal documents. 3 months ago, when Diane was in a coma after her accident and spent 2 weeks in the hospital, Aaron visited her every single day. We all thought it was an act of devotion. The truth was exactly the opposite. Aaron brought a stack of documents with him. He took advantage of the moments when his mother drifted in and out of consciousness to obtain her fingerprints and signature. The document was a full power of attorney, a POA. My chest tightened. A sharp pain ran down my spine. My son, the son I had once been so proud of, had deceived the very mother who was fighting for her life. What did he do with that POA? Pierce continued in a firm voice. He secretly transferred full ownership of your family home into his own name. And he didn't stop there. Last week, he used that same house as collateral to secure a massive loan from one of Gallagher's partner banks. He spent every dollar on Brittany's diamond engagement ring and the deposit for the extravagant wedding at Gallagher Estate. The betrayal was revolting. This was no longer ordinary ingratitude. It was a crime. A calculated case of elder financial fraud. Aaron had driven us out of the very home we had spent a lifetime building together. He was willing to throw his own parents onto the street in exchange for the smile of a gold digger and the approval of a hollow family. I didn't shout. My anger had frozen into something much colder. I looked at the family photograph on my desk that had been taken 10 years earlier. Aaron's smile in that picture suddenly looked painfully fake. I spoke into the phone. Aaron thinks he got away with it, doesn't he? Pierce answered immediately. Yes. He believes the power of attorney is completely valid and that no one can undo what he's done. If he can't repay the loan, the house now belongs to the bank. I leaned back in my chair. A deadly smile slowly formed across my face. Aaron forgot one thing. Who do you think purchased that house and designed its financial structure 15 years ago? He believes he's holding all the cards. What he doesn't know is that he has just triggered a time bomb that I planted myself. The deed to that house contains a special clause that Aaron has never been capable of understanding. The 15-year debt bomb has finally reached the moment it was meant to explode. I ended the call with Attorney Pierce. My office fell back into a deathly silence. I stood up and walked over to the wall safe. I entered the security code. A dry mechanical click echoed through the room. I pulled out an old leather-bound folder. Inside was the original deed to the house I had purchased 15 years earlier. Aaron thought he was the smartest man in the world. He believed tricking his mother into signing a power of attorney and using the house as collateral was the perfect move. But he was far too inexperienced. What he didn't know was that the financial structure of that house was tied to a special balloon mortgage. It had been financed years earlier through the lending company owned by Apex Holdings. According to the supplemental agreement, any change in ownership made without the written consent of the original co-signer me would immediately trigger a financial protection clause. By secretly transferring the title and using the house as collateral for a loan from Gallagher's partner bank, Aaron had violated that clause. Without realizing it, he had activated the accelerated repayment provision. The entire remaining principal, along with every accumulated penalty and interest charge from the past 15 years, had been consolidated into a single massive debt. The exact figure appeared on my computer screen: $2.5 million. The deadline to pay the full amount was not 30 years. It was immediate. Payment was due within 48 hours of the violation notice. I called Pierce again. My voice was calm and cold. Send the accelerated repayment notice to Gallagher's partner bank and to Aaron's personal accounts. I want this debt bomb to explode immediately. Pierce chuckled quietly on the other end of the line. They won't be able to come up with $2.5 million in 2 days, Mr. Chairman. I replied without hesitation. That's exactly the point. It's time for the cleanup plan to move into phase 2. I looked at the clock. It was now 3 in the morning. On the distant island of Bora Bora, it was probably a bright sunny afternoon. Aaron and Brittany had just arrived there for their extravagant honeymoon paid for with money obtained through fraud. They were enjoying the life of the elite built on our sweat and tears. I opened the family supplemental credit card management app I had created for Aaron back when he was in college. The spending limit was exceptionally high, and he was still using it to finance his luxurious vacations. I placed my finger on the keyboard. I pressed the button to lock the account. I cut off every source of funding he had. Bora Bora was paradise. But without money, it would become a living hell. I could already picture the look of disbelief on Aaron's face when his prestigious black card was declined at the front desk of a 5-star resort. The nightmare of my treacherous son had officially begun on an island half a world away. The brilliant golden sunlight of Bora Bora bathed a luxurious overwater bungalow that cost $5,000 a night. Aaron and Brittany were enjoying expensive cocktails beside the infinity pool. Brittany scrolled through her tablet, admiring the lavish wedding photos from Gallagher Estate. She smiled with satisfaction as she read the comments praising her wealth and glamorous lifestyle. Aaron lounged beside her, imagining the strategic partner position waiting for him back home. Both of them believed they were sitting at the very top of the world. That illusion of peace shattered when the resort manager approached. He bowed politely, but his expression was grave. He informed them that the resort's payment system had declined their accommodation charges. Aaron's credit card had been completely locked. Aaron jumped up from the lounge chair. His face turned crimson with anger and humiliation. He shouted at the manager, "Do you have any idea who I am? This is a black card with no spending limit. Your broken system is the problem." Brittany stood up as well, her voice dripping with arrogance. "This is outrageous service. My husband is a partner at Gallagher Imports. Call your general manager here immediately." The manager never flinched. He handed them the official bank authorization slip. The error code was unmistakable. Account permanently frozen due to suspected financial fraud. That wasn't all. Every one of their resort privileges had been cancelled immediately. They were instructed to pack their belongings and vacate the bungalow within 30 minutes or the local police would be contacted. Everything collapsed so quickly that Brittany panicked. She looked at Aaron with growing suspicion. Aaron forced himself to stay calm. He pulled out his phone and called me. He still believed I was the same old father who would always clean up the messes he created. I was sitting in my office at Apex Holdings back home. Night still covered the city. The phone on my desk began to ring. I answered the call and quietly activated the recording function. Aaron's voice came through the speaker. The arrogance from the wedding was gone, but his commanding tone remained. "Dad, what did you do to my supplemental credit card? I'm in Bora Bora and this stupid system is humiliating me. Unlock the card right now. I have to pay the hotel immediately." I leaned back in my leather chair. My voice was colder than ice. "That supplemental card is under my name, Aaron. I have every right to cancel it whenever I choose. And don't forget you were the one who threw away the $150,000 check in front of 300 guests. You said you didn't need my money anymore." Aaron completely lost control on the other end of the line. He roared in desperation. "Stop being so selfish, Dad. I only did it to protect the Gallagher family's reputation. Do you know how hard I worked to get Mom's POA? She's just a confused old woman. I only had to point to the dotted line and she signed it without reading a single word. Without using that house as collateral, I never could have paid for that wedding or secured the partnership. Are you really going to destroy your own son's future?" Every disgusting confession was captured perfectly in the audio recording. My son's cruelty and greed had reached a level beyond forgiveness. I ended the call without saying another word. I looked at the audio file that had just been saved. It would become the final nail in the coffin of Aaron's career. But Aaron wasn't the only one who would pay the price today. The first light of dawn broke over the skyscrapers in the heart of the city. Vincent Gallagher walked into the headquarters of Gallagher Imports in an exceptionally cheerful mood. He had just celebrated what he believed was the wedding of the century for his daughter. He was convinced that bringing Aaron into the company would give him the perfect pawn to help shoulder the burden of his hidden debts. Vincent had barely set his leather briefcase on his desk when the internal phone rang repeatedly. The head of logistics sounded panicked on the other end of the line. "Mr. Vincent, all of our warehouses at the shipping terminal have been sealed. Federal agents are here. They have a special audit order and a warrant to seal every shipment." An icy chill ran down Vincent's spine. He rushed out of his office, jumped into his luxury car, and sped toward the company's largest warehouse complex. When he arrived, bright yellow police tape blocked every entrance. Dozens of security officers were inspecting shipping containers. Vincent stumbled toward the lead government official. "There has to be some mistake," he stammered. "Our company has always complied with the law. Why are you seizing my property?" The official stared at him with an expression as cold as steel. He handed Vincent an official legal notice. "We have received instructions from your property owner and the parent company that controls your supply chain. Your warehouse lease has been terminated and a complete financial compliance inspection has been ordered due to the activation of the accelerated payment clause." Vincent snatched the document from the official's hand. His eyes widened as they landed on the signature at the bottom. The warehouse owner was a subsidiary of Apex Holdings. The highest legal representative and true owner of the entire supply chain was Warren Becker. Vincent collapsed beside his luxury car. The quiet man wearing the simple suit he had publicly humiliated at the wedding the day before was actually the landlord who controlled the lifeline of Gallagher Imports. With nothing more than a snap of his fingers, Warren could reduce Vincent's entire business empire to ashes. If you've made it this far, then you're probably enjoying the story. Please help us with one quick favor. Like this video and subscribe. Leave a number 5 in the comments so I'll know you've stayed until this point, and include the name of your hometown or favorite city. Many people watch without doing that, but it costs you nothing and means a great deal to us. At that very moment, Vincent's personal phone rang. It was Aaron. His treasured son-in-law was sobbing from Bora Bora. Aaron told him that every account had been frozen and that the bank had begun foreclosure proceedings on the family home because of the emergency $2.5 million debt. Vincent roared into the phone. "You idiot, you and your father set me up. My company is about to go bankrupt." Aaron stood there in stunned silence, unable to understand what was happening. He and Vincent had only one option left. They had to return home immediately and beg for forgiveness from the mysterious chairman of Apex Holdings. Neither of them realized that the meeting waiting for them at the top of Apex Tower would become the place where both their reputations and their freedom would be buried forever. The Gallagher family's private jet made an emergency landing on the runway beneath a gloomy afternoon sky. Vincent, Aaron, and Brittany stepped off the aircraft with exhausted faces. Every trace of the arrogance they had worn only days before had vanished. They rushed directly to the headquarters of Apex Holdings, the towering skyscraper that stood as the city's symbol of financial power. Brittany stumbled on her expensive high heels. They still carried streaks of dried mud from the grounds of Gallagher Estate that she had never bothered to clean away. They passed through multiple layers of security before taking the high-speed elevator to the executive floor. Vincent whispered desperate prayers under his breath the entire way. He hoped the mysterious chairman of Apex Holdings would show mercy and save Gallagher Imports from the edge of bankruptcy. Aaron stood beside him, drenched in sweat. He still couldn't understand how his luxurious life had collapsed overnight. The massive oak doors to the chairman's office slowly opened. Inside was a minimalist office that radiated absolute authority. At the center of the room stood a large leather chair facing the floor-to-ceiling windows. Vincent stepped forward. His voice trembled. "Mr. Chairman, we've come to beg you for a chance to survive. My company has been frozen. Please extend our debt obligations. We're willing to accept any conditions." The leather chair slowly turned around. Aaron collapsed to his knees immediately. Brittany covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. The man sitting in that powerful chair, dressed in a finely tailored charcoal suit with the calm presence of a king, was me, Warren Becker. I folded my hands together and looked directly at the 3 trembling people standing before me. There was no anger in my eyes, only the calculated professionalism of a creditor. "Welcome to my office, Vincent. Let's discuss your debt." My voice was calm, deep, and decisive. It extinguished the last spark of hope Vincent still possessed. He stared at me in complete disbelief. "Warren, you're the owner of Apex Holdings. Why would someone like you spend all those years pretending to be a middle manager?" I smiled coldly. "Real wealth always chooses silence, Vincent. Only empty people need to show off to hide the rot inside them. You used my son as a shield for your debts, and my son chose to betray his own parents in exchange for a worthless business card." Aaron crawled across the floor on his knees toward my desk. Tears streamed down his face. "Dad, I was wrong. The pressure, the vanity, it blinded me. Please save me. The bank is going to take the house unless I come up with $2.5 million. I'm your only son." I looked down at the son I had once loved with all my heart. Every trace of sympathy had disappeared the night I listened to his confession over the phone. I pressed a button on my desk. The large display behind me came to life. The recording of Aaron's phone call from Bora Bora began playing throughout the office. His arrogant voice and every insulting word he had spoken about his own mother echoed through the room. Each sentence struck like another guilty verdict, sealing his fate. Aaron's face turned the color of ash. He knew everything was over. But this was only the beginning of his true punishment. The recording ended. At that exact moment, the office doors opened once again behind him. Justice was about to take far more than money. It was coming for the freedom of everyone who had chosen betrayal. The recording ended. A chilling silence settled over the chairman's office. Aaron remained on his knees. His own disgusting confession about tricking his mother into signing the power of attorney still echoed through the room. The massive oak doors swung open once again. This time, it wasn't my secretary. 4 FBI agents dressed in black suits entered with calm, disciplined precision. The lead agent displayed his badge and an official arrest warrant. He looked directly at Aaron and Vincent Gallagher before reading in a clear voice. Mr. Vincent Gallagher, you are under arrest for financial fraud and schemes involving the federal supply chain. Mr. Aaron Becker, you are under arrest for financial exploitation and fraud against an elderly victim. Vincent staggered backward until he slammed into a glass display cabinet. Aaron completely fell apart. He looked up at me with bloodshot eyes filled with desperation. Dad, please, save me this one time. I don't want to go to prison. I'm your son. I'm your own flesh and blood. I rose slowly from my chair. I straightened my suit jacket. When I looked at him, there was nothing left but ice. My anger had long since burned away. Only justice remained. You forced your own father out of his home. Now I'm simply your creditor. A father's love is never an excuse to protect a crime. You will answer for what you did to your mother. The sharp, metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the office. Aaron and Vincent were placed in restraints and escorted away in stunned silence. Brittany stood frozen. She watched her new husband and her once powerful father being led away like criminals. Her wealth, her social status, her image of high society. Everything vanished within a matter of minutes. At that moment, the door to the private lounge connected to my office opened. Diane stepped into the room. She was wearing an elegant dark blue evening gown that reflected confidence and quiet strength. She looked nothing like the heartbroken woman who had been shoved into the mud the day before. She walked gracefully until she stood beside me. The moment Brittany saw her, she rushed forward. She dropped to her knees and clung to Diane's legs. Mom, please save us. I know I was wrong. I'll do anything you ask. Brittany's expensive high heels were still stained with dried mud. They had become a fitting symbol of the moral poverty and humiliation that now surrounded her. Diane looked down at her quietly. She gently withdrew her leg from Brittany's grasp. There was no hatred in her eyes, only profound disappointment. She spoke softly, yet every word struck like a needle. Don't call me Mom. The mud on my dress from yesterday has already been washed away, Brittany. But the stain on your character and Aaron's will never wash away. 2 federal agents stepped toward Brittany and instructed her to leave the building. The Gallagher empire had completely collapsed. Those who had chosen betrayal were now leaving in handcuffs. But the final judgment waiting for them beyond that office would prove to be the most devastating punishment of all. 3 months after the confrontation at the top of Apex Holdings Tower, everything had been decided by the rule of law. The trial concluded swiftly under the watchful eyes of the media. Aaron was sentenced to 12 years in prison for financial exploitation and fraud against an elderly victim. Vincent Gallagher received an 8-year federal prison sentence for financial fraud. My once arrogant son now sat before the court wearing an orange prison uniform. He lowered his head and wept in regret. I traded an entire kingdom for a prison cell. Those were Aaron's final words before he was escorted to the state correctional facility. Brittany lost everything. The mortgaged house was foreclosed on and sold by the bank. Every remaining asset belonging to the Gallagher family was seized to satisfy their financial obligations. Yesterday I saw Brittany standing at a bus stop beneath a pouring rain. She wore faded clothes and held a janitorial job referral card she had just received from an employment agency. The mud-stained shoes she had once worn with such pride were now old and worn out. Vanity had finally returned her to the place she had earned. Diane and I chose to leave the past behind. We moved to a peaceful country estate on the outskirts of the city. Tall green trees surrounded our new home and silence filled the air. Sending my own son to prison was the most painful decision of my life. But for a family, it was like cutting away a diseased branch to save the entire tree. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional surrender. Protecting wrongdoing only corrupts the character of the people we love. My story carries a lesson for everyone. True strength is not found in wealth, expensive suits, or public displays of success. True strength is found in integrity, conviction, and moral character. Never trade your family for temporary luxury. The price will always be far greater than you imagine. Thank you for staying with Dad's real-life revenge until the very end of this story. Join our community by liking this video and subscribing for more gripping stories centered around family justice and redemption. And as always, thank you for being part of this community.